Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you again to the Chamber of Commerce's Legislative Coffee. Thank you for all for coming. My name is Mitch Stride. I'll be your facilitator this morning. Before we begin, I would ask first that you silence your phones and other electronic devices, and then if you would stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of these United States of America, and to the Constitution which founded our republic, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning. We'd like to thank you for coming again. We would like to thank Wilson School for letting us be here again. We'd like to thank Diana Ostrowski, the Public Information Director, for being here, J.J. Harvey, President of the Board of Education. Mr. Dan Trer's been with us several years, sets up everything for us. Thank you again, Dan. Appreciate that. I'd like to also thank the sponsors for today's event. That this would not be possible without. Today's sponsors are C.T. Hansen & Sons Painting, Leach Camper Sales Incorporated. Our gold sponsors are Maristar Casino Hotel, Black Hills Energy, Iowa Western Community College, and the series sponsor Hy-Vee. We'd also like to thank Iowa Western College for being here to translate up front, or sign for us. Our format is the same as it's been for several years now. We'll be taking questions in the back of the room, and I'll try to hit as many different questions from as many different people as possible. You will have the opportunity to ask a follow-up question when you're done. Our panel up here may decide to answer, may not want to answer, it's up to them. And I'll take questions during the meeting, so please pass those forward. Before we begin, we'll have opening comments, but I think we've had a lot of success with introductions. Your legislators up here do want to know you better, and we're going to meet them, but first, if we could just do a quick round of introductions, starting in the front, working to the back. If you just stand up and quickly say your name, that'd be great.
Steve Gill with Iowa School for the Deaf and the Iowa Braille Sightseeing School. Oh, sorry. David Williams.
Don Van Solen. My name is Shirley Hicks, retired ISD school teacher.
Niall Smith, I'm Iowa School for the Deaf.
Rebecca Gall, the principal at Iowa School for the Deaf.
Brad McGill.
Brian Holder, candidate for Congress.
My name is Jerry Elledge. I'm a citizen.
Mike Sizer, taxpayer. Roland Lynch, rail passenger and railroads.
Timber non-corral.
Good morning, I'm Beth Morris with the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Network.
Jim Ware. Roger Wall, retired tax collector.
The least popular man in the room right now.
Doreen Knut, Council Bluffs Community Schools. Richard Bellows, Council Bluffs Schools.
Marty Shudak, Council Bluffs School.
Nancy Gillespie.
George Gillespie.
Leanne Walker, I'm one of your constituents.
Jim Doherty, visiting from Virginia.
Susan Doherty, Yorktown, Virginia.
Stephanie Hansen, C.T. Hansen and Sons.
Steve Hansen.
Pamela Kinney.
Dan Kenny with Iowa Western.
John Conrad.
Scott Corey, America's Renewable Future.
Naomi Lyman.
Barry Cleveland, Silverstone Group, and the Council Bluffs Chamber of Commerce.
Jeanette Shearbrock.
Tom Shearbrock.
Kate Cutler.
Denny Mulqueen, retired. Fred Miller, Front Bureau.
Marianne Coor, Crescent.
Steve Holtman.
Sharon White, Council Bluffs City Council. Linda Schmidt. Joanne Hester.
John Erickson, Iowa Drainage District Association.
Good morning, Diana Ostrowski, Council Bluffs Schools, welcome.
J.G. Harvey, Council Bluffs School Board.
Aaron Welch.
Good morning, Jay Ferris, Meridian Credit Union, and the City of Council Bluffs Civil Service Commissioner.
Jack Bruce, Tucker Peterson, Law Firm.
Jim Nelson, retired.
John Kohler, Iowa Western, and the Council Bluffs Chamber.
Bob Mutton with the Council Bluffs Chamber. Ray Dawes with Ivy.
Bob Hendricks with Ivy and Lewis Center School Board. Jeff Jorgensen, Chairman of Potawatomi County Republican Party. John Blue, community member, and John Happy, the High Commissioner, Fuel Saver Car. We appreciate the plug.
Jean Blue.
Mary Sullivan.
I'm David Kozire.
Nancy Kuzire.
Walter Kozire, retired.
Patricia Russman, Promise Partners in Early Childhood Iowa for Potawatomi County. Bonnie Weiserwitz.
I'll stand up. Martin Weiser.
Bill Keister, retired.
Marty Aaronstone, attorney.
Ann Carpenter.
Lev Mitchell.
Martha Bruckner, Council Bluffs Schools.
Kathy Hall, Methodist Jenny Evans, Council.
Dennis Duval, retired teacher, Council Bluffs.
Steve Ballmer, Methodist Jenny Evans.
Tara Slavin, Methodist Jenny Evanson.
Ed Chance, retired.
Amy Shams, Methodist Jenny Edmondson.
Karen Collins, Methodist Jenny Evanson.
Stacy Goodman, Omaha Community Foundation.
Doug Goodman, clear title and abstract.
Kathy Reber, Council Bluffs Public Library. Laura Morrison, Connections Area Agency on Aging, and the Council Bluffs Chamber of Commerce.
Rob Coach, Council Bluffs Community Alliance. Jay Tremont, Council Bluffs Community Alliance.
Rose Sedania Purdue, Council Bluffs Citizen.
Karen Sedania, Purdue resident.
Bill B., retired iron worker, local 21.
Merlot, retired Millwright business rep, retired.
Ed Bremer, retired teacher.
Mike Gallo, Council Bluffs Community Alliance.
Mark Anderson, Midwest Living Center.
Pam Liddick, retired federal employee.
Louis Lake.
Mary Martin, volunteer coordinator at Connections, and then the Relay for Life Committee.
Lois Sanusa, caregiver with Comfort Team.
Okay. I think that's everyone. Thank you. I know that really helps the group up here, and what a great cross representation of our community. Great, lots of different groups represented here. So, as always, we'll start with opening comments, and then we'll get to the questions.
Okay, I'll start. Last week was final week, and as all of you know, there's this process where the legislature whittles down the number of bills they're going to deal with in an orderly fashion throughout the session. The first funnel is a bill has to get out of committee in its house of origin. So Senate files all had to be out of committee last week, by the end of last week. And so this week, we start to pass all those bills on the floor. So it was a whole lot of floor time, very little committee time this week. And we have to get those done because 3 weeks from yesterday, all of those bills have to be out of the House committee, the Senate files, and the same thing true of the House files. They have to move through the process and be out of the Senate committees by 3 weeks from yesterday. So a whole lot of floor activity, and probably most of them tend to be non-con bills early in that floor activity. Next week, they will get maybe a little more controversial, in the week after that. If you haven't gotten them done by that final week, you're kind of on borrowed time if you don't get them through the Senate by the end of next week. So that's the process. There's been a whole lot of floor activity, not a lot of controversial bills. So I think I'll just stop there and wait for your questions.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank the sponsors for being here. And it has been a pretty busy week. We've been working real hard to get these bills out and decided on, but most have been non-controversial, like Mike says. And I want to thank you all again for coming.
I'm State Representative Mary Ann Hanusa. I represent House District 16, the eastern and southern portions of Council Bluffs inside the city limits. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to our sponsors and of course Wilson Middle School for being such a great host for this event. I can't add too much more, just simply to say that it's nice to have a little bit of a break from the back-to-back committee meetings that we were going through during funnel week, and then last week was a lot of floor debate, very few committee meetings and abbreviated committee meetings, mostly held, if they were held at all, just to assign bills to members. And this coming week will hold quite a bit of debate as well. The bills are now starting to filter through the committees a little more heavily. So that's what we're looking at over the next few weeks. And then this Thursday, March 19th, is the March Revenue Estimating Conference Report, which we are awaiting to see what those numbers are going to be for the projection for our state economy. So budget work is continuing, a lot of committee work kicking up again, and then a lot of debate. So again, thanks for being here, and we look forward to your questions.
All right, the first question comes from Mitch Strike. He wants to know what the chances are that you get done 30 days early and what you'll do with those 30 days if you get out early.
0 chance.
I think you speak for everybody, so we'll move on. Our first question today comes from Tim Rohr. Tim, right over here. Regarding tanning salons, what is the status of minors being prohibited from tanning salons and your support or not? I know part of that was addressed last time.
I'm actually not positive what the status is. I can't remember. We may have passed it this week. If we didn't, it's likely we'll pass it next week in the Iowa Senate. So there's a bill out there that basically says if you're under 18, you can't use a tanning parlor. You can do whatever you want to at home or lie out on the deck and get the sun, but you can't use tanning parlors. It's a bill that was brought to us by the industry itself, saying they wanted to be proactive, and as many of you know, for us baby boomers, they got lots of tans back in the 60s. Denny and Kate.
Thanks for calling us out there.
Yeah, they're both several years younger than me, but not a lot. So, for people that get anybody that got 2 or 3 bad sunburns as a teenager, there's like double the risk of getting melanoma, skin cancer. And I think there's a lot of concern that in the interest of looking good, people use tanning parlors and may in fact cause themselves irreparable damage. So the industry came to us and suggested outline it for people under the age of 18. Adults can make their own choices, but not allowing kids under 18 to use tanning salons.
But that, if I remember right, we passed that out of the House.
It's passed through committee, but we haven't
Passed
voted on
committee,
it.
we haven't been debating yet. There's just been so many bills come up for debate, and I foresee, I can see it passing. What I'm hearing is pretty well bipartisan support on that one.
It has passed through committee, it has not passed the House yet, but I would imagine that it would be almost unanimous, if not a total sweep in terms of unanimity on that bill.
Question two?
Well, do you think there could be any, protest from these young people, I mean,
Well, we
I'm sure a
have-
lot of them want to keep doing it, but, I mean, is there any organized action you think that could occur?
Well, we have not outlawed the sun. We just outlawed tanning parlors, so they will still have plenty of opportunity to find sun if they so choose.
There was a suggested, in the House, there was a suggested amendment, I'm not sure if it's in the Senate as well, to allow 16 to 18-year-olds to use the tanning salon with the permission of parents. And while that had some support, I think the overwhelming thought was that it just needed to be banned until 18.
All right, next question comes from John Blue, right to work. With the recent passing of Wisconsin's right to work bill, how will it affect Iowa's ability to attract new business?
Hi, John. I don't know that it will have any effect at all. Iowa's been a right to work state for over 40 years. I would think that the impact would be more on Wisconsin's ability to attract businesses. So I'm not sure that it will, do you want to clarify that, or?
But basically, it's just, I'll make sure that we still keep the right to work here in Iowa. Not anything changed.
I don't see that going anywhere.
Yeah, I don't think that Wisconsin's gonna affect us in any way, and there's been no discussion over that, so I think it's just gonna stay the same.
I don't think there's even a bill introduced in either chamber to repeal right to work in Iowa.
Follow-up question, John? Okay. Our next question comes from Dr. Bruckner regarding education. What is the state set date by which all school districts must set their budget? Why is that important?
You probably know better than we do, but I think it's April 15th is the last date for them to certify their budgets. And as everybody in the room knows, there's a big argument in the legislature as to whether 1.25% and slipping to 40th in the country is the right approach, or doing a little better and closing the gap to get to 25th in the country in terms of our support for students, when our results in schools on almost every measure are in the top 10. So that's the argument. I understand. We're trying to make the judgment as to whether or not we can convince Republicans in the House to move from their 1.25 number. So all I can say is stay tuned.
The House has passed a bill with one amount, as you know. The Senate has passed a bill with another amount. There has been a conference committee convened. I don't sit on that committee, but I believe Senator Ronstahl does, and House leadership, the Speaker, Majority Leader, and I believe the Chair of Appropriations in the House. They've met several times, and I'm not sure if they have a meeting scheduled this week or not. You can speak to that better than I. But again, we are, I think, trying to responsibly budget, knowing that we have a tight budget year, knowing that, again, we do not want to put schools in a position that they were in 5 or so years ago, where promises were made, promises could not be kept, and schools took a horrendous hit because of that. And so we are at an impasse at this point. Eventually, it will be worked out.
Now, like you said, you were talking about when you have to follow your budget, your deadline is April 16th. Yeah, like I said, leadership's, it's in committee, they're working on it, and I'm not sure where they're at. I'm hoping they can come with proper funding, but we'll see. I hope it's soon.
Follow-up question?
I do have a follow-up question. So what happens if you can't come to an agreement between 1.25? What happens for school?
Well, if we take no action, and for people to understand, we set budgets in a way that says you have so many dollars to spend per pupil, and the amount is, Martha, help me, is it 6,400 and?
Well, actually, the superintendent of Des Moines, or of Davenport, made a very good point. It's different for different school districts. It's about 6390.
Okay. So I was pretty close, right? 6390 per pupil. So if you have 10 pupils, you get $63,900 to run your school district, okay? And then every year we come in with this allowable growth number, and if you have the same number of students, 10, you get $63,900. And if we do 1%, you get another $63, right, per student. Yeah, 60. No, I'm sorry. No, it's 6,400. Let's round, so I don't have to deal with the nines. Okay, it's 6,400. If we do a 1% allowable growth, moves the decimal 2 places, and it's $64 per pupil. Times that same 10 pupils, which means you get $640 new dollars for your budget. And your budget's controlled, and there's a whole bunch of other little pieces to it. There's weighting, where it's a little more for special ed students, and so there's a whole bunch of varieties like that that adjust it, but that's the basic formula. So when we talk about allowable growth, we're talking about the per pupil expenditures. Currently, we're at $63.90. That is $1,612 below the national average, which the national average is $1,612 more than that. And if we go with 1.25, projected based on what people have done for the last 10 years into the next several years, we will go from 35th to 40th in terms of our support for students. Now, I certainly recognize it's not all about money, but it's certainly some about money. That determines how many teachers you have, how crowded your classrooms are, what kinds of programs you can have. Art, music, sports, all of those kinds of things are dependent on that total budget when it's all said and done. And so that's the issue, and that's what the legislature is struggling with, is what we should do on that number. Now I forgot what your question was when I did the teaching exercise.
What happens if you can't agree?
If we can't agree, it's zero. If we take no action, they will have the same $6,390 per pupil that they had before. Because we don't actually, this isn't the bill that appropriates the money, this is the bill that controls all of the local school district budgets at that number. And then there are other complicating factors that make it even more messy to explain, and that is, if you're a school with declining enrollment, you have something called the budget guarantee, where for 1 year, you can budget at 101%. So if you had declining enrollment, you get, so if we take that action and we end up at zero, I'd say this, at 1.25%, 48% of the school districts in the state of Iowa, you'll see a property tax increase because they will go on to the budget guarantee. The higher you get, and that's because they have declining enrollment. The higher you get the allowable growth number, or the state supplemental assistance, the House calls it state supplemental assistance, the Senate calls it allowable growth, which makes it even more confusing for everybody. But I think I'll just stop there. Everybody's eyes are glazing over.
All right, our next question is from Leanne Walker. Leanne, right over here. Regarding SF 168, it's now SF 347 puppy mill legislation. Commercial established licensure and regulation. This bill is supported by the Iowa Veterinary Medical Association. It was assigned a new bill number SF 347 because some technical amendments were made. Can you please talk about this bill?
Sure. This is a bill that relates to the regulation of breeders in Iowa that breed dogs, and some of them are clearly puppy mills. That means there are places that just churn out as many dogs as they can. But there are also some that are legitimate businesses that take very good care of their dogs, and they kind of resent having it referred to as puppy mills. So the tension is about whether or not the legislature is going to have our Secretary of Ag inspect those facilities. They're USDA licensed breeders, licensed and regulated by the federal government, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and there are folks that think Iowa should have its own inspections, and there's lots and lots of tension over this issue in the legislature. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, the legislature pursued similar legislation. They worked through a bunch of things. They came up with the statute we have on the books now that allows for inspections, you know, on a complaint basis in certain circumstances. And again, it's kind of a hard-fought compromise. Now there are folks coming back wanting additional regulation, and I'd say it's a toss-up in the Iowa Senate as to whether that's got enough votes to pass or not. That's kind of the straight answer. And that's the fun part of my job. I get to decide which things come up that are ready, and which things that I make the judgment are not yet ready. And I can't tell you I have an answer to that today on that bill.
Yeah, follow-up question? Okay. Our next question comes from Rosadinho Perdue. Rose, where are you? Right over there. Regarding Veterans Business Directory, can you give us an update on this piece of legislation? How will it be implemented?
Well, that's the legislation I proposed, and it did get assigned to the Economic Growth Committee, my committee, and Mayor Ann is chair of that committee. And what's going to happen is it's just going to be implemented. We got together, and Debbie Durham and Tim Whipple through the Economic Growth Department, we're just going to start implementing that. We're not even going to put it up for a vote. So it is going to happen. Probably next year, we'll start doing that. So I'm happy about it. I'm very proud of that piece of legislation. But, that's where we're at on that.
Excuse me, Representative McConkey is right, it was assigned to the Economic Growth Committee. However, we did not believe that it actually needs to be in code, that it's a good idea, and we want to implement it, and we sat down, the two of us sat down with the General Counsel for the Economic Development Authority, and he, once the session is over, he is going to work this summer in the interim on either addressing it with the Home Base Iowa websites and program there, or in another area within economic development, which obviously is, is a perfect fit for that. So we think it's a good idea. Obviously, we have to use caution because we want to make sure that, veterans businesses that are listed are legitimately, veterans businesses and so forth. So there are some steps that need to be taken, but it will become reality. It just is not going to be a piece of legislation, but it will, within hopefully the next 6 to 8 months, we'll have it as part of something that can be used by Iowans.
You have a follow-up question? Okay. Our next question from Jeff Jorgensen, right here, regarding healthcare. Do you consider the use of ultrasounds a part of an informed decision process when it comes to healthcare?
The House, is it still on, or did I? Okay. The House passed a bill on Thursday afternoon, which stated that a doctor needed to certify that a woman undergo an ultrasound before an abortion is performed. Does not restrict the woman's right to abortion. It does not require that the woman view that ultrasound. It simply requires that the offer be made to view that ultrasound, and that passed the House 5739, I believe. I voted in favor of it as simply another opportunity or step to be taken before an abortion is offered as an opportunity.
Well, I voted against it on several reasons. It's, what we're doing is we're putting medical practice into code. We've never done that before. That's a huge step. And they're always offered that. Anyway, we need to code that. And we could be criminalizing our doctors. And in early trimester, in some cases, they've got to do a transvaginal ultrasound. And whether she wants it or not, she's going to be forced, the young women are going to be forced to undergo that procedure. I understand give them all the information possible. And the doctors do that. I think what we're doing is victimizing our women. I mean, young girls and women that's been victims of rape and incest will be forced to go through this procedure. Now, they don't have to look at it, they're not forced to look at the ultrasound or listen to the heartbeat, but the doctor's forced to perform this procedure. You know, I'm not a doctor. Nobody in the House is a doctor. We shouldn't be legislating medical procedures. Rob Taylor is a Republican that voted against this. He isn't a doctor, but his wife is. So that tells you a lot. So I was against it. We're actually victimizing victims again. We could be doing that. I think it's bad legislation, and I hope it doesn't. I understand the purpose of it. They think, have the young girls and women well informed on what's going to happen. And they get that. It already happens. Not all the time they have to do the transvaginal ultrasound. I think that was a real tough debate. Some of the stuff that came up on the floor was pretty embarrassing. They're talking about penises, vaginas, and it just, but it's something that, it's a precedent we should never be setting, putting medical procedure in the code. It forces our doctors to do stuff that they may not want to do. It should be the doctor's decision, and that decision should, I understand people believe in abortion. Some of it's faith, some of it's scientific, but I truly believe that should be left up to the woman, her family, and the doctors. And that's the reason why I voted no.
I'd just say I believe everybody in this room, if they need a legal medical procedure, that should be between them and their doctor, no one else.
Jeff, you have a follow-up question?
I do. Would you consider the decision to have an abortion agonizing, maybe tormenting for women? And would you consider the abortion process a life-changing experience? Why or why not?
I think, of course, it is a very tough decision for anybody to consider. But Jeff, what you basically want is a law that will say a woman that has been raped has to, by law, carry the baby to term. I think that goes too far. I think that's extreme.
Certainly, the prospect of an abortion is troubling to many women, whether they choose that option or not. I would just say one thing, as far as standard of care, and I'm not a physician, but my understanding is that in the case of rape, an ultrasound is actually standard of care or practice. But several years ago, I was actually counseling a 17-year-old girl who I had become acquainted with, who had become pregnant and she was terrified to tell her mother, and so she told me. And she didn't really know what to do, but her mother had told her she needed to have an abortion, and so that's what she was going to do. Well, she then ended up in sort of odd circumstances having an ultrasound. She saw the picture of her baby, and she then opted to keep the child. Now, ultimately, she did have the abortion because her mother was quite insistent that she do so. But it was, I watched her go through a very heart-wrenching situation because she was torn. She had seen the picture of the ultrasound, and it had really affected her. So I think it goes without question that regardless of decision that a woman makes, it is traumatic, regardless of the decision. But I think the thought process certainly is a profound one for a woman.
Okay, our next question comes from Jerry Fledge. Jerry, where are you?
And Jerry Elledge.
Oh, Elledge, I'm sorry. Regarding the Stand Your Ground laws, SF 137, HF 52. Please tell us how this is progressing.
The House did pass, and I don't remember, do you remember the number of it? I don't remember the number, but we did pass a Second Amendment bill on Wednesday, was it? Wednesday, I guess, that had a number of provisions in it. One of which was allowing children who are trained by their parents under age 14 to be able to learn how to properly handle firearms. I don't think some of the provisions in there. We did not have ground legislation. That's a separate bill. And that is, I'm actually not sure what the status of that is in the House. If it's in public safety, or no, actually it might be in judiciary, but I actually am not sure. I can check on that.
I don't, yeah, I'm pretty sure Standard Ground has not come out of committee on either side. I know it hasn't come out on the Senate side, and I've not seen a version out on the House side.
I don't believe it has.
Which, I mean, just for your information, that effectively means it's not likely to come up this session unless there's another way to get to it. And there are always some ways to get to these things. But I'd say the Standard Ground law is perhaps a bit of a misnomer. Current law allows you to protect yourself with deadly force if you fear for your life or your property, allows you to defend yourself at home, in your workplace, and in public. And there is no duty to retreat. There is some duty to think before you shoot. There is some duty in current Iowa law to think before you shoot, but there's no duty to retreat. So Stand Your Ground is a bit of a misnomer. If you read chapter 704 and 707 of the Code of Iowa, you can see that you have the absolute right to defend yourself and your family and others. But like I said, there is still some duty under Iowa law to think before you shoot.
Jerry, a follow-up question?
Yes, Ms. Anusha said she would get back to me on that. And I will.
Okay.
She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that. And I will. She said she would get back to me on that How will you get back to me?
If you will give me your contact information after the copy, I will check on the status of it and then get back to you.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Bart Morrison, Bart's right back there, regarding Medicare managed care. I believe there was a bill that passed the Senate, SF 452, which provides for oversight of the Medicare managed care program. Is this over in-house? And if yes, what do you think of it, and what are the chances of passage?
The Senate passed.
So let me give a little background. So yes, there is a bill, I believe it's passed the Senate. That bill set out the principles of managed care because the governor's made a recommendation that we move towards managed care in the way we do, in the way we operate Medicaid in the state of Iowa. And probably everybody in this room has some sort of managed care in your health insurance coverage, some mechanism that manages that care. And it's designed to help keep costs low, but it's also one of those things where you get worried that maybe the bottom line becomes more important than the health of the person involved. And so we worked with the hospitals, the nursing homes, with other providers in terms of how we're going to build this managed care mechanism when it comes to Medicaid, and pass that through the Senate last week. So, and I think the House is likely to take something up on the subject. Whether they keep our version or make some changes probably remains to be seen, but I think they're likely to take it up.
I don't sit on that committee, so I would say that's probably correct, but I don't know. Again, I can check on that too if you'd like me to. But
Follow-up question, Mark?
No, if you could just follow up on it, because I understand it's a very comprehensive,
That's not a question, Barb.
if you could follow up, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question from Naomi Linen, legalizing fireworks. She's gone right now? Oh, back there, okay. Recent poll by the Register shows the majority of Iowans are in favor of legalizing fireworks. Would you support such legislation?
Well, that is gonna come out of my committee, and we had a lot of discussion over that. And I've been talking with other representatives, what it's like, and we all know what it's like in Council Bluffs, 4th of July. I mean, they just didn't enforce the ordinance we have now. We've got to look at public safety, but, you know, it's kind of 50-50 for one. You know, and I haven't really made up my mind on that yet, you know, how, and then take a look, I haven't looked at the bill yet, so, and I'm not even sure if it's made it out of committee yet, or the fireworks, I'm not sure what committee it is.
oh, I thought you said it was in one of your committees.
No.
Public, probably in public, well, it could be state government. I'm not sure. I have not read the bill. It's not one of the
It came
committees.
out of Ways and Means, and I didn't get assigned the bill. But, yeah, we're looking at it, and I know it's in subcommittee, so we'll see. I mean, I'm kind of, for what I'm saying, I support it, but I have to see the final bill. I think it could be, it's one of those bills they tell you to stay away from. It was, but, you know, like, you can't win with this thing. But I understand, trying to understand both sides of it and where we're gonna be at on public safety on that one. So it's up in the air, put it this way.
It's kind of like it says on all those packages from the fireworks, light and get away. I actually think it's probably more likely to pass this year than it has been in previous years. It's been bouncing around for many years in the legislature. I think people are kind of shrugging their shoulders about it and basically saying we got a heck of a lot of folks that, I can tell you on the 4th of July, when my next door neighbor, one of my next door neighbors calls me up and says, quit shooting off fireworks in my backyard, when it's the guy that lives behind me, it's kind of like, and I'm dozing on the couch, I'm a little cranky with them when they do it. Well, the reality is people get fireworks, they shoot them off in the state. So some level of allowing it in the state of Iowa probably makes some sense. So I think it's probably gonna happen this year, but I don't know that for sure, so. It's one of those kinds of issues that it's really pretty easy to push us one way or the other with a few letters and phone calls. If you want it, give us a call, the people, and if you don't want it, give us a call too, so.
I have not read the specific legislation. I'm aware of the issue. Obviously, it has been around for several sessions. At this point, I'm probably inclined to vote no, although again, I want to read the legislation before I do that. I know that a lot of people say, well, everyone's doing it anyway, so we might as well legalize it. When something becomes legal, there are people who then will start a practice because it is legal there, and may not be, capable or prepared. I know that we've had pleas from some of the veterans in our house to vote against it based on accidents and so forth that they had seen in wartime. Obviously not with fireworks, but blindness and so forth that's occurred from different explosions. So at this point, I am undecided, and I will read the legislation though before obviously it comes to a vote.
You have a follow-up question, Naomi?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Next question from John Erickson. Want to raise your hand, John? Yeah. Regarding levees and drainage, can you give us an update on the status of levy language changes and corrections for combining levy districts?
I'm pretty sure there's a vehicle out on the Senate side, and I have not heard any objections yet, so that usually means it's likely to pass. Usually if it has trouble, there's been somebody that's come up to us and said, hey, this thing's real problematic. I think it's okay, but I don't know that for sure.
All right, thank you. No follow-up question, John? No, okay. Our next question comes from Dr. Brian Jack Holder over here regarding medical marijuana reform. Adults. Why should Iowa citizens with demonstrated medical needs be forced to become medical refugees in order to receive medical marijuana treatments?
Well, way to not bias the question. Most of us, I think we demonstrated this last year when we took up legislation relative to intractable epilepsy. We tried to start down a path that both kept very tight control on the intoxicating elements of marijuana, but also opened it up. So in particular, kind of the face of this was several mothers with kids that have 200 to 300 seizures a day. 200 to 300 seizures a day, and cannabis oil that has CBC, I don't even know what the chemical, but it doesn't have the THC, very low THC, that's the intoxicating part of marijuana. So we passed legislation last year that said we wouldn't throw you in jail if you got that and were using it for your kids. Okay, this year we're looking at it again because it's essentially impossible to get it in the state of Iowa, which means you have to bring it across a border, which means you have to break federal law. So some effort to figure out a way to produce this in the state of Iowa. So I think people are certainly open to that. But I'd be very clear that there is nobody in the legislature that has any interest in making it available for recreational use. Absolutely zero chance. If it even looks like that, remotely, the legislature will not move that legislation. So we are working through that. There's a bill that I believe is out of Human Resources on the Senate side, and we intend to pursue that legislation.
I would echo what Senator Grassley's done.
It's both a compliment and an
There
insult.
you go.
And I'm sure Senator Grassley feels exactly the same.
I'll help you move into your new office. So, Senator Gronsdahl stated accurately where the situation is. There's discussion in the House as well in terms of modifying the law because there are a lot of Iowans who are frustrated with the law as it is enacted. Because again, it is federally an illegal substance and the law does not allow you to bring it across state lines into Iowa. So there is some discussion. I'm not sure where it will go in the House, but certainly that law is being looked at to see how it can be perhaps more fine-tuned or provide the opportunities for people that it was intended.
I just repeat what's already said, there has been some discussion on it, and there's been some frustration on what would, for the cannabis oil, the availability of it, they can't get it, it's awful restrictive there, and we need to look at that. And there isn't any chance of it ever marijuana becoming available for recreational use. But we need to take a look at it, and I haven't seen anything come forth yet, but I believe we will be looking at something.
What advice do you have for adults like myself who have suffered a spinal injury and had to deal with chronic pain for the last 26 years? Do we need to move to Colorado to live a pain-free life?
I wouldn't suggest
I would not